I think people need to really give their personality over to their home. You know, I think people look at lighting and they think because, well, it's something it's installed, it is physically there in the space, I've got to be safe with my choices, right? A bright pink chair is an easier thing to swallow because it's a chair. I can replace the chair, I can move it to a different room, I can throw a blanket over it. But a light fixture is there and it is hardwired in my home. And so they tend to want to be safe, but I encourage them not to.
Hi, I'm Krista Hermanson, an interior designer with over 20 years experience. And I'm delighted today to be speaking with Craig Volkerink, who is the regional sales manager of LightForm, one of our sources. Craig is an expert in the area of lighting and just is surrounded daily with the most spectacular fixtures ever made, possibly. So I know that we're going to learn a lot about how to make lighting work for you and the many different applications of light fixtures that are available now that you may not know about. So please join me in welcoming Craig.
Thanks very much for having me.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
Oh, it's hard for me to actually stay focused on this conversation because there are so many beautiful things in here.
Well, I mean, try working here. We eat, sleep, and breathe designer, beautiful, everything here. So yeah, I get it.
We're curious to maybe share some information with homeowners about how best to support them as they're making these decisions about what fixtures to put in their homes. And I think the thing that is maybe a pretty common question, it's not as exciting as some of the style elements, but tell us about LED.
Oh, interesting. That's a good question. So LED technology, North Americans are very afraid of it. The European Union banned halogen lighting quite some time ago. So it's all LED lighting throughout Europe, right? So LED technology, when North Americans think of it, they think of car headlights in the early 2000s. Very blue, very, very bright, very, very harsh.
Right.
But LED technology has come a very, very long way since then, right? So we have things like color temperature to help control the color of the light so it's not so blue. There's technology like warm dimming. So this is something that I actually didn't even realize until I worked in lighting. Halogen bulbs are a color of light when they're lit, and then as you dim them, they get warmer. It's not something that I ever consciously noticed, right? But with original LED technology, you couldn't do that. But now we're seeing warm dimming. So LED technology is matching exactly what halogen lighting does, right? So in general, LEDs are infinitely more efficient than halogen lighting, right? So it's better for the environment, it's better for the world. They're more stable than halogen lighting, so they're more durable, they're recyclable, things like that. And they're poised to replace all types of lighting. So even like fluorescent tube lights, there's now an LED alternate for that. So they do come in every type of format that's out there. It's funny, the city of Calgary actually went through a program of updating all of their street lights to be, and the traffic lights to be LED, right? Which is great, we love that. We love that it's better for the environment, but LEDs are not hot. So what happened in our winters is for the first time ever, we had snow buildup on traffic lights. It might be like the one application in the world where you want hot light fixtures to exist, right? So, but because LEDs are cooler, they're much safer for homes and environments and things like that. And you can use them in ways that you couldn't prior.
Right, that's right. Because with halogen bulbs, I mean, you couldn't touch them. You know, you'd bring your hand near the surface of a halogen bulb and you would feel the heat coming right off of it.
Exactly, right? And even an example is this fixture that's kind of behind us here. It's paper, right? Having fixtures made out of interesting materials like paper and acrylics and plastics and things like that. So obviously we specialize in, designer brands here, but designer doesn't necessarily have to mean expensive anymore, right? When you're using elements like paper or acrylics or even fiberglass and things like that.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing. We're seeing such a different range of materials in lighting than we used to see. We actually just installed this in a project not too long ago. The LED, I'm glad to have you describe that and give us some clarity around it because, our clients are like, should we do it or should we not do it? And there are environmental benefits.
Absolutely.
And often the bulb is integrated right into the electronics of the fixture.
Yes.
So there is no changing the bulb, correct?
So when a fixture is integrated LED, so the source is built in, again, this is one of those fearful things. I'm investing in this fixture, I'm spending all this money. What happens when the bulb burns out?
Right.
Well, LEDs don't burn out. That's not really a thing. So when you read on the packaging that LEDs are rated for, say, 70,000 hours, what that means is when you buy the fixture and you turn it on for the first time, it's at 100% brightness.
Right.
After 70,000 hours, the fixture will still be at 70% of its original efficacy. So after 70,000 hours, the brightness droppage at most will be 30%. Does that make sense?
Yes,
throwing around a lot
sense.
of numbers, right?
No, that actually makes perfect sense.
And then after 70,000 hours, the LEDs will slowly fade. But we're talking like over the course of how many decades, right? 70,000 hours, if you do the math, I think that's like 8 hours a day, 7 days a week for something like 17 or 18 years.
Right.
Right, so the fixture is meant to last a really, really long time. Now,
right.
For a product that's integrated LED, there's a little device that sits inside, usually your junction box in the ceiling, and it's called a driver.
Mm-hmm.
And what that driver does is it takes your incoming power. You've got 120 volts coming into your home, right? And it makes it lower voltage to power the LEDs because they operate at much lower power. Right.
Thus their energy superiority.
Yeah. And then a driver, the power coming into your home also wildly fluctuates. Like it's not actually 120 consistent volts, it's all over the place. So the driver also makes it safer to operate the LEDs in consistency. So that driver is what takes a beating from your incoming power. So if anything's gonna fail, it'll be the driver. And drivers are 40 bucks, maybe $100 to replace, depending on the type. So that's where these LED integrated fixtures are sort of replaceable. You're never replacing the light source itself, but a driver might have to be replaced in the future.
Well, and just in terms of landfill, that makes so much more sense because, you know, what do you do with disposable bulbs?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And how many of those would you go through over 70 years or 40 years or 70,000 hours?
Yeah.
Which is such a long time. So maybe in a commercial building where the fluorescence or the light fixtures, not the fluorescence, but the ceiling fixtures are on all the time, then you're going to be cycling through bulbs more rapidly.
Exactly.
But for typical residential use, you probably are never going to have to do anything with that fixture.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you for dispelling those myths.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
Let's talk a little bit about color temperature, because you mentioned that.
Yes.
And lighting is actually incredibly technical.
Yes.
Even when we take away whether it's an LED or a halogen bulb or whatever the lamp type might be, lighting is actually a very broad and deep science.
Yes. Yeah, that's actually one of the things I think is really interesting about it. I was always like a math whiz when I was younger. And so lighting is this weird combination of like design and beauty with science. Like there's something kind of nerdy about it. And color temperature, because when I started this job, I've been doing this for almost 7 years now. When I started this job, I didn't really have a background in any of this, so I had to learn it all. And color temperature was something that confused me quite a bit. It's a range of color, right? We know that light comes in spectrums and things like that, but color temperature refers to the color of the light. And it's measured in kelvins. That's why it's called temperature, right? Because temperature is measured in kelvins. So it's on a scale from 0 to 10,000. And 0 is a low temperature, but it's a very warm color. This is the part that really threw me. The lower the temperature, the warmer the color, which is the opposite of actual temperature. And then as the temperature increases and it gets closer to 10,000, light goes from orange, it looks like it's white, and then it turns blue. White light itself, which is daylight, is about 5,000, which is sort of right in the middle of the spectrum, is actually very blue. We don't really see it that way. You don't think of it being that way. When you're outside, it doesn't look blue around you, right?
Which is why you should always check exterior paint colors at various seasons and in the full light of day outside.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Even holding fabrics up closer to your natural light sources, right?
Yeah.
So the reason, this is just a fun fact. Well, I don't know if it's that fun. It depends how nerdy you are.
Well,
so the reason,
it's fun for us.
Right? So the reason that higher temperatures are very blue is that fire, when you think of an actual flame, so you're sitting around the campfire, it's very, very orange. But fire itself, campfire is actually a very low temperature. Right? And the hotter that fire burns, the bluer the light it gets. And we think of blue as being very cold, right? So that's where that spectrum comes from and why hot temperatures are actually very blue, which is very cold.
In our perception.
In our perception, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In our visual perception of
Yeah. So most of the lighting that you do in your home, decorative lighting is between 1800 and 2700 Kelvin. 3000 is what I recommend for functional lighting. So your architectural lighting, your recessed lights, your under counter lighting, your bathroom lighting, kitchen island lighting. And I wouldn't go beyond that for anything residential. Corporate offices are usually 3500 to 4000. Retail, it's around 4000. It's a little bit closer to daylight because it's meant to keep us a little more alert, a little more awake. I did one project that was 6000 Kelvin, which was like a medical lab. Right? Hospitals can be that temperature. If you are a member of the general public wanting that color temperature, I will assume that you are a serial killer or a vampire, because those are the only types of people that want that color in their home. I did it once and I thought, oh, this person's gonna hate it. And then they actually loved it, which good for them by all means. But it's not the vibe for most people. If you're doing it on your own without the help of a designer, you wanna think about how these different types of light interact with one another, right? Like a lot of people think, oh, I just need to buy a couple pendants for my kitchen. Well, how do your pendants relate or function with your architectural lighting, meaning your recessed lighting and things like that, right? North America is also kind of hung up on the fact, well, we got to put 4-inch pot lights everywhere and then overlight a space, right? But technology, especially with LEDs, you can get the same amount of light out of something much smaller. Like a 1-inch pot light now can be the same as a 4-inch. Why would you put a 4-inch pot light in your ceiling when you can have something more interesting and minimal, right? So certainly that. A lot of people often think that they have to match the color temperature throughout their space as well, but that's not how we function in our day-to-day life. We're sitting here, we've got daylight coming in from the window, but then we have, like the bulbs in this fixture behind us, I think are 2500 Kelvin, right?
Yeah, they look quite warm.
Yeah, right.
And inviting.
Exactly, right? So I don't want people to feel concerned that their home has to be all of the same color temperature, because that's not how the world works. You light candles on your dining table and those are like 2200, right? So yeah, thinking about how all of those things sort of relate to one another and play with one another is important. And certainly the functionality that you want out of a space. You know, I have a client that was a professional chef, so overlighting their island is something that they wanted to do. But does everybody want that? Maybe not so much, right? And then dimming and controlling your fixtures is important too.
Yeah, and we're always thinking and talking to our clients about using light in layers. Yes. Right?
That's a great way to phrase it, yeah. I think Kelly Wersler had some online video I watched the other day. She's Kelly Wersler, of course I watched it. And she recommended, thinking about not just light as being overhead, but on the ground, having a light source that's low, something that's medium, something that's eye level, and then something that's high up. One of my coworkers in Edmonton, he has a very romantic way of thinking about, everything. He's very well-spoken, better spoken than me. But he says—
Impossible.
Well, you haven't met him. But he talks about that, when we walk into a space, we often look up to find direction, right? So when we walk into a mall or a grocery store, you're looking up. At the airport, you're looking up to look for signage and things like that. You're driving and you're looking up. So when we walk into a home or in any sort of space, we look up to take our cues as to what's where. So the type of fixture that you choose for a dining room will indicate, oh, that's the dining space there. That's the kitchen over there. And then some friends of mine moved into a new home. And when I walked in, I realized, I work in lighting, so I look up for that kind of thing. But I realized he's right. That's what you do. You look up to find the direction of where you are in your space.
Right. Yeah. We take our direction from the sun. It's no doubt it's biological.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if we think about how we layer light, because I've been noticing as I walk around the showroom, there are so many beautiful examples of soft indirect light, right? These very sculptural feeling fixtures that actually read more like art.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Right, light can certainly be art, and the light effect that it has can also be part of that art too, right? So it's kind of depends on the individual and how important light is to them. Some people don't care. For some people, it's a big thing, right? And when we're thinking about light, you also need to think about light and shadow. Where are the dark spots and things like that? That's what I talk about when I mean overlighting. We put these like runways of lights in our ceilings, right? And the whole space is just bombarded with light. Certainly dimming it is helpful, but layers and shadow are important to us biologically. That's how the world is around us, When you step into like a cave of light, if you want to think of it that way, it's not good. Doesn't feel good.
I know. Yeah. I actually think that dimmers were maybe the best thing ever invented for most residential builds. And I'm thinking of my own home. It was built by someone else, and I did a renovation a few years ago. But I was always struck. I think there were 20 pot lights in the family room.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And you look down these rows of silver cans, right? Which is kind of a plug and play way of approaching lighting that often builders will employ, right?
Absolutely.
And I look at ceilings like that and I think, well, like either somebody was on commission with the electrician.
Which is a thing, I come up against that all the time, that we try and encourage our clients, because we do have the ability to assist with your architectural. We're known for the decorative and the beautiful and the sculptural, but we have LED ribbon light, we have architectural products. And a lot of times, as soon as the builder or electrician steps in, it's, no, don't do that, do this. And it's like, well, why? And I'll take a look at the products and I'm like, I get it, but that's like an off-the-shelf Home Depot special. Love Home Depot, don't get me wrong. But it lacks the bespoke feeling that I think that someone like me can provide.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Absolutely. And we lean into, professionals like you to help us with those kinds of things on a regular basis. I want to circle back to 1-inch pot lights, pot lights.
Yes.
Because this is something that we're seeing more and more of, and we're starting to specify on some of our jobs as well. And I love how products have evolved. It's not even so much technology as it is just product design has evolved to give us a 1-inch perforation in a ceiling that still gives us a very wide beam spread. So I don't know if there's anything you would add to that. That's another thing when it comes to your architectural, is certainly thinking about beam spread, right? And focusing light. Do you want the beam to be focused down if it's a kitchen island, or are we just generally lighting a space, right? But that's what I love about LED technology. It keeps getting smaller and it keeps getting brighter. So we're getting more function out of these small fixtures. I'm also curious to hear about how that fine tuning, if you like, of that light fixture can support things like aging in place.
Oh, yeah, that's a really great point, right? With LED technology, it's not just about the color of the light, but the quality of the light, right? So as we age, we actually need whiter and brighter light to be able to function, but there's also a quality measure called CRI. And it's color render index, and it's about to be replaced with a different index. There's something new that's sort of being used as the measurement, and I can't remember what it's called. But basically, the higher the CRI, the better the quality of light that you're getting. It's how well it renders a color compared to daylight, because obviously daylight would be 100, right? Because that's the best quality, right?
Right.
So anytime you're shopping for bulbs or fixtures, anything that's LED, it'll have a CRI measurement, and the higher the CRI, the better, basically. Yeah. But then also we want to be able to control light in our own environments, because even as you're aging, warmer and softer light is better for you throughout the day, right? So that's what we're talking about when it comes to human-centric controlling for light. So whiter, say 4,000 Kelvin during the day, and then being able to dim it to a warmer setting in the evening to make it easier on your eyes and to help you fall asleep, really. I don't know if you have that setting on your phone where your phone turns orange after a certain time. It's basically that, but in your home. Yeah.
Well, and our brains need that. Like we're built to follow the cycles of the day and night and the earth. So our brains actually need that warming temperature, if you like, or that absence of blue, which is very stimulating to our brains. I mean, the science has shown us that. We need those warmer temperatures to actually calm our bodies down and signify, readiness for sleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like we gather around the campfire. Yeah. It's a very warm.
Yeah, the sun sets, it gets oranger, and then you have that, and then lights out.
So while we're talking about these very cutting edge, if you like, light fixtures that your showroom is filled with, one of the things that our listeners might not be aware of is the certification process that light fixtures go through to be sold legally as electrical fixtures in Canada.
Yeah, we specialize in European imports, and most of our brands make their products fully to code, and the fixtures certified. For lighting, it's usually a UL label or ETL. It's not necessarily CSA. So those are the labels to really look for. For anything that's not pre-certified for use in North America, sorry, I should preface that. For a brand to get their product certified for use in North America, it's about $10,000. And that's $10,000 for one fixture. So if a brand has 50 fixtures within their lineup times $10,000 each, you're talking about a lot of money that they have to be willing to invest in order to sell in North America, right? So for some of our manufacturers, they don't care. They don't care about the CSA labeling or ETL labeling, and the fixtures are just European certified. For a project that needs to pass code, like what you're talking about, we do in-house certification. So the fixtures, for a fee, will make a pit stop at our Toronto facility, they'll undergo certification, and they'll carry on to site. What that process actually looks like varies depending on the fixture. Most of the time, the inspector just shows up and looks at it, says, yep, it's good, puts a sticker on it, and then charges us hundreds of dollars, which we have to pass on to the consumer.
Yeah.
Other times, fixtures have to be altered in order to pass code. For example, the Post Chrissy by Catalani & Smith, one of my all-time favorites, but it's unfinished fiberglass. And unfinished fiberglass isn't certifiable. So we actually spray it with a fire retardant spray, then it gets stickered, and then it carries on to site. There are some brands where the fixtures have to be completely rewired, but like I said, for the most part, it's just a sticker and on it goes, but we still have to pay hundreds of dollars. A wall sconce is about $250, and it'll go up to, say, $700 for like a big chandelier.
Yeah. Well, thank you for clarifying that for us. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the fun stuff now that we've done all the technical stuff. Thank you for sharing your encyclopedic knowledge with us.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So what are the big trends that you're seeing in terms of like shapes or...
Yeah, absolutely. I think, lighting trends follow similar trends to anything else. So organic brutalism is very of the moment. So seeing materials like concrete, we're seeing rendered walls in concrete and furniture and things like that, but concrete being used in a light fixture is weird. You don't think of fixtures,
counterintuitive,
right?
Because they should float.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have, on display in the showroom, we have the A-Plum by Foscarini, which is an iconic fixture. It's been around for a long time, made of concrete. Other brands like Hind Rabai are leaning into ceramics and terracotta. Roland Hill, a very famous brand, had just released a series of fixtures that are ceramic as well. So those natural-esque sort of materials, obviously they're molded into a specific shape, but they still have something kind of natural about them, right? So that's certainly one.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of colored glass being popular again recently.
Yes.
Boma is one of my favorite brands. We have these beautiful colored glass fixtures in the showroom, and Boma does large-scale glass really, really well. Bocce, very famous Canadian lighting brand.
I know. They hold a special place in my heart because I know they're local.
Yeah, and we've got some new Bocce on the way that'll be here in a couple weeks. Colored glass is definitely a trend. And I had one more. Oh, sort of like kind of leaning into, again, that organic brutalism, the wabi-sabi, the handmade sort of effect. We have a really great brand called A Emotional. It's made of, it looks like it's fabric, it looks like it's delicate and fragile, but it's actually painted stainless steel. And then the fixtures are all made by hand. And when they hire someone to work for them in part of their production facility, they let them try out all the different materials, and whichever sort of fixture material they have a visceral response to, that's the product that they make. Like, they just make that product because they have an emotional attachment to the shapes and forms. Because everything's handmade, everything has a slightly unique shape. And they're very inspired by Mother Nature and underwater sort of patterns and shapes and things like that. Yeah.
Well, and wabi-sabi is such a beautiful concept, right? It's seeing the perfection in the imperfection, or how the imperfect makes something actually perfect.
Absolutely.
Which I think is just a lovely human way of seeing ourselves maybe and approaching life.
Yeah,
right?
that's fair. Yeah.
So to live with that in our homes is also, I don't know, it just feels kind.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. And then, like, as far as trends specific to lighting, obviously we've talked about different types of dimming and color temperature, but indirect light sources are very of the moment. And I love an indirect light source where you don't know where the light is coming from. A 1-inch recess light, you still see the little circle on your ceiling, but we've got lots of brands where the light is meant to be reflective. So it's shining up and off of something, off of your ceiling, or off of some sort of diffuser and things like that. So you're not looking up at a light source. We've got lots of stuff around the showroom that has that kind of effect in it. I love it.
Yeah, well, it's been fantastic for me, from where I sit on the design side of things, to witness the way we handle lighting selections inside of homes. You know, I'm thinking of kind of builder standard houses, or even more extravagant homes that you see, where it's sort of plug and play, one light collection by manufacturer X, and then it's the same light fixture in various iterations throughout a home.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And what you are doing here is the absolute opposite of that. So how has that changed since you've been in the industry?
Well, for me, that's what we've always done here, right? Like, there's home builders that, of course, have their packages that they get from certain places where all of the finishes are the same and all of the shapes are the same. And people think that, well, that's the safe thing to do. And of course, that's the safe thing to do. I could sell you the exact same fixture to go in every room as well, but there's nothing bespoke about that. There's no personality to that.
Right.
Right. And so it's okay to mix brands and to mix materials and to mix metals, right? Nobody wears matching shoes with their belt, with their bag, with their hair clip. You know, that's not a thing, right? It's about finding what speaks to you. Are you someone that leans into the organic vibe? Well, great. In that case, we've got Catalani & Smith, we've got Bocce, we've got Terzani has some beautiful organic fixtures that meld in a little bit of glamour, right? So it all depends on you and your home. And I think people need to really give their personality over to their home. You know, I think people look at lighting and they think because, well, it's something it's installed, it is physically there in the space, I've got to be safe with my choices, right? A bright pink chair is an easier thing to swallow because it's a chair. I can replace the chair, I can move it to a different room, I can throw a blanket over it. But a light fixture is there and it is hardwired in my home. And so they tend to want to be safe, but I encourage them not to. Yeah, and we're here to help navigate that process, right? You know, our showroom is beautiful, but it's limited in what we can show. And our website actually has less than half of the product that I have access to. So the real resource is working with someone like myself or one of my team members to help you create this bespoke, beautiful space.
And no two spaces are going to be the same.
No, and they shouldn't be.
Ever.
Yeah, they shouldn't be.
Yeah. Cool. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's what comes across is your passion for doing this with each and every client that you work with.
Absolutely. Yeah. I eat, sleep, and breathe lighting. It's literally what I do all day long, every day. And I always get very excited when we add new brands and learning more about them. And we're like a Rolodex, a human library of light fixtures. That's what we are. We're here to be that for you so that you don't have to be, even as a designer, right? You've got a lot of different parts of a project that you've got to know about and have an understanding of. So it's helpful to have experience and expertise that you could just rely on. You know, I'm not going to steer you wrong. You know, I'm going to provide you with the correct certification. I'm going to let you know about the dimming protocols or the color temperature, whatever that is. I'm here to help navigate all of that.
Yeah, no. And we certainly feel that when we work with you on a project. And it's lovely that you will also work with individual homeowners. Of
course, absolutely.
To help them and support them in that way. Yeah. Honestly, it's like Christmas morning every time I come in here. I'm like, oh. One of the things I'm working on is creating a faster turnover of things. Obviously, we have furniture too in the showroom, but creating a faster and a higher turnover of things so that there are more new things. To me, it looks the same as it kind of always does. But for you, who's only here maybe once every 6 months or so, there's always, of course, shiny and new. But I want more turnover and encourage people to come back even more frequently. Yeah, I have to say there's a certain amount of lust in my heart looking at this one right here. Yep. It's so pretty.
The iconic Bocce 73 series.
Yeah, just so beautiful.
They blow the glass into a burlap sack. That's what gives it that texture. Yeah, so there's the white and then there's 3 shades of the gray finish that are there. This is called the sculptural cable installation. So your power is off to one side, just a single junction box in the ceiling. And then you have these wispy wires for the power, an aircraft cable for each pendant. So I love Bocce because it's essentially modular and there's all different ways that it can install and things like that. If you don't like the wispy wires, you can do just straight hanging pendants.
Right.
And clusters of all size.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're buying Canadian.
Yes, it's Canadian as well, which we love.
Craig, thank you for sharing your curiosity and passion and all of the energy that you bring to this. It's always such a joy to communicate with you in the course of running a project and for you to take the time to be with us today and to share all this great information with our listeners. It really is so appreciated. So thank you for that. It's been an absolute joy to sit and talk with you. Britt would like me to remind our listeners to subscribe, like, and share the KHD podcast. I hope this has been of value to you today. And if you have a topic that you would like us to explore in future, please comment below and let us know. We'd love to talk. Take good care. Bye.